In this video, we shall discuss the dynamics of self-overcoming through the lens of psychology pioneer Dr. Carl Gustav Jung. Jung was an influential authority in psychoanalysis, philosophy, and general psychology. His writings emphasized the spiritual texture of the inner world, with consciousness suspended between layers of an autonomous unconscious, thus forming an economy of distinct ingredients. Carl Jung termed the intermingling of these elements, the self, with the libido as the currency of its dynamics. The libido in this context is to be understood as the sum of psychological drive, which transcends the sexual instinct. Consequently, the polarity of the psyche allows us to model the emotional functioning of the individual according to established thermodynamic principles, that is, conservation and entropy. Using simple metaphors, let us examine the embedded problems within modern man's personality that causes suffering. While the slurry of problems burden the modern individual, the most pertinent is psychological infantilism, an impetus for the erosion of masculine values. Dr. Jung described the infantile individual as follows. An individual is infantile because he has freed himself insufficiently or not at all from his childish environment and his adaptations to his parents, with the result that he has a false reaction to the world. On the one hand, he reacts as a child towards his parents, always demanding love and immediate emotional rewards, while on the other, he is so identified with his parents through his close ties with them that he behaves like his father or his mother. This passage illustrates the hallmark of the undifferentiated personality, lust for validation and over-identification with the feminine. Regarding the personal model, Carl Jung analyzed the problem further. The forward-striving libido, which rules the conscious mind of the son, demands separation from the mother, but his childish longing for her prevents this by setting up a psychic resistance that manifests itself in all kinds of neurotic fears. That is to say, in a general fear of life. The more a person shrinks from adapting himself to reality, the greater becomes the fear which increasingly besets his path at every point. Thus, a vicious circle is formed. Fear of life and people causes more shrinking back, and this in turn leads to infantilism, and finally into the mother. The reasons for this are generally projected outside oneself. The fault lies with external circumstances, or else the parents are made responsible. Shrinking back into the mother can be taken as a metaphor for neurosis and its pathological effects, addictions, indiscipline, and laziness, which besets the individual in a chaotic loop. Now, as a principle, the feminine is to be understood as everything that changes, such as the climate, society, the moon, and the unconscious. The unconscious is therefore rightfully referred to as the mother. Hence, battle for deliverance from the mother is also the call for liberation from the unsympathetic demands of the unconscious. But man cannot simply tear away his animal unconscious. The best compromise he can hope for is a conjunction of the two opposing elements, a counterintuitive paradigm for which Carl Jung wrote the following. If the libido connects with the unconscious, it is as though it were connecting with the mother, and this raises the incest taboo. But as the unconscious is infinitely greater than the mother, and is only symbolized by her, the fear of incest must be conquered if one is to gain possession of those saving contents, the treasure hard to attain. Since the son is not conscious of his incest tendency, it is projected upon the mother or a symbol. But the symbol of the mother is not the mother herself, so in reality, there is not the slightest possibility of incest, and the taboo can therefore be ruled as a reason for resistance. Insofar as the mother represents the unconscious, The incest tendency, particularly when it appears as the amorous desire of the mother or of the animal, is really only the desire of the unconscious to be taken notice of. And it is as much a vital necessity for the unconscious to be joined to the conscious as it is for the latter not to lose contact with the unconscious. Jung termed this task the individuation process. We shall cover what it entails later in the series. Now, insofar as the unconscious is part of the individual's personality, then we can admit that man is in fact raging with himself, or more precisely, with the primordial forces that make up his unconscious. The psychic substance for this chaos stems from a yet deeper terrain of the mind called the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious is described as a registry of instinctive patterns common to all mankind. The content of the collective unconscious cannot be grasped cognitively. So Jung introduced the concept of the archetypes to demonstrate the symbolic structure in which they exert themselves. Archetypal forces act from within and without and persistently manifest in the destiny of all individuals. Dr. Jung addressed their role as follows. The phenomena of the unconscious can be regarded as more or less spontaneous manifestations of autonomous archetypes. And though this hypothesis may seem very strange to the layman, it is amply supported by the fact that the archetype has a numinous character. It exerts a fascination. It enters into active opposition to the conscious mind and may be said in the long run to mold the destinies of individuals by unconsciously influencing their thinking, feeling, and behavior, even if this influence is not recognized until long afterwards. The primordial image is itself a pattern of behavior. What happens in fantasy is therefore compensatory to the situation or attitude of the conscious mind. This is also the rule in dreams. Fundamentally, archetypes are the preoccupation of all religions, and the fascinating reinforcements which many belief systems manifest are coordinated through similar esoteric pathways. We can therefore argue that psychology gave the blueprint for ancient myths, and thus salvation, for example, would have emerged regardless of the direction in which human history unfolded. To this end, Carl Jung wrote, "The archetypal structure of the unconscious corresponds to the average run of events. The changes that may befall a man are not infinitely variable. They are variations of certain typical occurrences which are limited in number. When therefore a distressing situation arises, the corresponding archetype will be constellated in the unconscious. Since this archetype is numinous, that is, possesses a specific energy, it will attract to itself the content of consciousness, conscious ideas that render it perceptible and hence capable of conscious realization. Its passage over into consciousness is felt as an illumination or a revelation or a saving idea." This text describes the process of enlightenment, an initiation which is the first milestone of self-becoming. The radical experience is usually triggered by a distressing occasion that causes the breakdown of the calcified borders of the mind, thus permitting streams of unconscious ideas penetrate the conscious psyche. A radical change of personality follows. This motif is the noumen of near-death experiences, apparitions, visions, and other religious experiences. So what exactly do I mean by self-overcoming? From what we have learned so far, we can define self-overcoming as the process of choosing and integrating the character of the dominant archetype of the specific resurgence, a task that requires subduing the tumultuous unconscious. Therefore, all distractions that oppose this goal, that is, tyrannical devices of the reality which violently limit the realization of this advantage, must be overcome or endured. Fortunately, the ambivalence of the unconscious can be radicalized to extract as much assistance as possible on this journey. Eventually, latent psychic intuitions within the soul will be reactivated, allowing the individual realize his wholeness. And in doing so, we free ourselves from the tormenting spirit of the age and escape mental anguish. Or as Carl Jung advises, life calls us forth to independence, and anyone who does not heed this call because of childish laziness or timidity is threatened with neurosis. And once this has broken out, it becomes an increasingly valid reason for running away from life and remaining forever in the morally poisonous atmosphere of infancy. In this video, we'll set the foundation for many lofty concepts, which we shall explore further in the next video. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.